Many people often think that the wonderful life of being a wildlife rehabilitator or dealing with exotic animals in need is a great and amazing, glorious life. And it can be fun, but it's also filled with a lot of biting, scratching, bleeding, pooping, and just being hit by bodily fluids from animals that you rather would not have on your person. So in this video, I'm going to give you a little insight into what it's like dealing with a bunch of reptiles in need. So, my main job is reptile education. That's what I do. It's what I do full time. I take animals to people and I show them what they're like. I show them not to be scared of them. I talk about what makes a good pet and what doesn't make a good pet. But most of my animals are critters that most rescue centers aren't really equipped to handle, like arachnids, reptiles, amphibians, exotic mammals. So sometimes vets and other rescues and other people will contact me if they have an animal that they aren't really equipped to handle, but they know I can. So I've taken in everything from little frogs and spiders all the way up to a snapping turtle, big lizards, tortoises, etc. Sometimes I'll keep the animals for education if I think it'll be good for handling or if it'll be good to talk about and educate the public on. But most of the time, these animals I rehome. I get in corn snakes and bearded dragons, ball pythons like crazy. I'll get in leopard geckos. I've rehomed a couple iguanas, Russian tortoises. So back in the beginning of December, I got a call from probably the main dog and cat and mammal rescue in the area. It's Mohawk Hudson Humane Society, and they had a police seizure case where I think it was 25 or 30 animals were taken into custody by the police from this household. Most of them were dogs and cats, bunnies, ferrets, but 10 of them were reptiles. So they called because even though they have this amazing facility with kennels and rooms for dogs and cats and bunnies to help find them homes, they weren't really equipped for dealing with a whole bunch of various sized reptiles. So they knew I did reptiles. They knew I would probably be better at gauging what a sick versus healthy reptile was and what they would need. So I went down and I helped them out. So this is the single biggest intake of animals I've had at one time. This is nearly 10 animals that I had to go pick up and then try and find space for in the reptile room while also keeping them isolated from my education animals. So what this video is going to be is just going to be a general summary of the animals, what their condition was when I picked them up, how they've improved, if I'm going to keep them for education or adopt them out. So let's go. So first up were these two bearded dragons, which are the number one animal I take in. There was this big adult male and then a subadult female that were being housed together in a 40-gallon. There were a few problems, one of which is they were being housed on just plain sand, which is a huge no for bearded dragons. It's hard to clean, bacteria builds up really quick, it can cause impaction. It's just not a good idea. It just looked and smelled like it had not been cleaned in months. It just smelled disgusting, even from a few feet away. There was all these dried poops all over the sand. There was some dried up, gross looking super worms in it. Now he seemed to have a thing for bashing his face against the glass because lizards don't really see glass that well, and I'm sure he was really hungry. So he actually had a pretty beat up chin right here. It actually has healed up a lot since then. He just shed his face, so it's looking a lot nicer. And then another big problem was when the reptiles all came into the shelter, the staff was really excited because, they mostly get dogs, cats, and bunnies, so it's not very often you get some cool looking reptiles. So the staff all handled a lot of the reptiles, and the problem was that one of the snakes had a huge mite problem. Now, snakes might spread like crazy. They can easily transfer from snake to hand to another animal if you're handling them in succession. So when the staff handled these reptiles, they handled the snake that had the mites and they actually spread it to a bunch of the other snakes. Now, snake mites aren't really designed to deal with bearded dragon scales. They're more for digging up under snake scales, but they can and did get up in the sensitive skin all around the eyes and then around the corner of the lips. So instead of having to treat one animal for snake mites, I had to treat 6 or 7. And on a snake, it's fairly easy to do. It's fairly straightforward. You just go down the body with your treating and stuff. But with lizards, it's a lot harder because you're not supposed to put mite spray and stuff in the animal's eyes, but that is where they're infesting them. So the bearded dragons actually proved to be the hardest one to 100% eliminate the mites from. So this is the female. She came in looking a lot rougher shaped than the male did. She was really underweight. You could easily see her ribs and her hip bone and her spine. She did not move around a lot. It looked like the male had been hogging most of the food. And she also had scars on her back from him attacking her. And that's one of the reasons why housing reptiles together is a big no. They're going to be competing for things like the basking spots, for the food. So it's just a better idea to keep beardies of no matter the sex, just keep them apart. And I actually talked about that back in my Australian reptiles video with my personal bearded dragons, if you want to go check that out. Now this is the only animal that looked just fine when I took it in. This is a rosy boa. I'm not 100% sure of the morph, but it was in a 20-gallon long tank, so suitable enclosure. It was on suitable substrate, good body condition, no stuck sheds or anything. But because people were handling all the animals, mites did pass to this one, so I did have to treat it for mites. It's a pretty friendly temperament, so I think I'll hang on to it and use it for education. Next up were these two boa constrictors. Now this one looks like a normal boa, but this one looks like this one looks like a red tail morph of some type. I'm not a huge morph guy, so I'm not 100% sure, but he definitely doesn't look like most boa constrictors. Now there weren't really any problems with these two. They were a little underweight, but that's not that uncommon for what I take in. The previous owner did say they've been housed together their whole lives, which is really not something you want to do with snakes or most reptiles. And they did get mites from the mite spreading, so I did have to treat for that. But they're both fairly friendly. They're eating fine, so I'll probably find them homes in the next few weeks. Next up is this little baby pied ball python. Now when he came into the rescue, he was actually in deep blue shed. He was shedding his skin, and the staff looked at this and they saw that and they recognized that, so they knew not to handle him, and that actually spared this little dude of getting the mite spread to him. Now his setup really wasn't that great. It was a big 40-gallon tank with a single hide in it that was too big for him. Ball pythons are a very shy species, so that much wide open space with a hide that he couldn't really fit in probably just caused him a lot of undue stress. And this is why you quarantine your animals, because if these animals were properly quarantined, if they had come into me, the mites wouldn't have spread. They would have stayed just with the one snake, and none of the animals would have been in trouble. So he was in shed when I got him. He was really underweight. You could see the spine fairly clearly. He looked really emaciated and dehydrated. So he's eaten a few times and he looks a lot better now. He actually has a couple scars on his back from what looked like where the previous owner was trying to feed him live mice or rats, and he wasn't interested in them, so the mice actually started chewing on him. And that's one of the dangers with feeding live, is if you don't check on them fairly often, the mice actually might start turning the snake into food. And this is a fairly expensive snake. I mean, pieds, I'm not 100% up to date on my morphs, but I'm pretty sure pieds go for like $300, $400, maybe $500. So it was just really surprising seeing this snake mixed in with kind of the more usual suspects I get in for surrenders, like beardies. I think I'll probably be keeping this one for education because ball pythons are awesome for it, and he's just so darn cute. And then there's this little ball of sunshine. This is a young Savannah monitor, and because of his temperament, surprise, the staff didn't really want to handle him, so he was also spared the mite fate. He is not a big fan of me or anyone really. He was kept in a 40-gallon tank with a mesh lid, so it didn't hold humidity well because Savannah monitors need a lot of humidity, and that's why he had some stuck shed on him. He came in really underweight. He was very lethargic. When I first picked him up at the rescue, he actually barely moved when I was picking him up. Now you can see he's eating more, so he's got a little bit of his attitude back. So apparently when the police came to seize these animals, the previous owner was actually bragging about how feisty and aggressive this one is. If you're bragging about how aggressive your animal is, you're part of the problem with the reptile keeping industry. Now I'll hold on to this one for a while, make sure it's at a good weight, bulk it up a little bit more, and obviously this one's going to take a while longer to find a home for than a bearded dragon, because I want to make sure that the next owner knows exactly what they're getting involved with when you buy a Savannah monitor lizard. I actually love Savannah monitors, and I know he's really grumpy right now, but that's just super cute to me. And now we have the original problem child of all the reptiles that I took in. This is a Brooks king snake, much like my Captain Jack. And he had the worst mite infestation of just about any reptile I think I've ever seen in my 10 plus years of working with rescued reptiles. He was absolutely covered. Thousands of mites on this poor critter, and his living arrangements did not look that good. He was in a 30-gallon tank, and the substrate looked like it had not been changed out in years. There was a couple different sheds all torn up on the bottom. There was quite a few poops just caked into the bottom, and there was just mites crawling everywhere. He actually had a stuck shed completely still on his body just because there were so many snake mites dug under his scales. He had a couple weird looking scales that I'm assuming were healing from scale rot. He just shed about 2 weeks ago, so he's looking much healthier now. So just while I was there, I gave him 2 baths. It's warm water with a little bit of dish soap, really helps kill off a lot of the mites. So just in those 2 baths, I eliminated a good chunk of the mites. And over the next couple of weeks, I successfully eliminated the rest. He was actually the first one that I got 100% cleared of all the mites, even though he was the one that came in with the most of them. The rescue also had 2 boa constrictors that the police seized. They were adults, but they were just in such bad shape. The mouth rot was so bad their gums were swollen out, and they were so emaciated, and they had open wounds and stuff, so they were unfortunately euthanized. So that's an update on a real case of reptile rescue that I dealt with. That was the single biggest intake of reptiles I've had at one time into my house. So luckily there wasn't anything super wrong, like respiratory infections or things that needed surgery. It was just some snake mites and some other little things that were pretty easy to fix. So they'll be here being quarantined and fed and get back to healthy standards. And then, like I said, a couple of them I'll hang on to, but I'm gonna rehome the rest. So thank you folks for tuning in. If you liked the video, hit the like button. I'd be very grateful. And if you have any questions or comments about what I do or any of the animals, feel free to leave a comment down below and I'll get to it. Be sure to subscribe if you want to watch more of our future animal-related videos. I know while I have that Savannah monitor here, because I don't usually have one, I'll probably do a top 5 worst beginner pet reptile list because, spoiler alert, they're one of them. Thank you for tuning in and I'll catch you later. Obviously, with a temperament like this, the staff didn't want to go, ow. Next up is this little pied boy, keep them or adopt them out, so buckle in. No, that was awful. Never saying buckle in again in my life. Hi. Spread like crazy. Are you bobbing at me? You check your attitude.